So welcome Jane to the Lisa podcast. On this podcast we go inside addiction. I just wondered what your sort of journey was to get to where you are today.
Well, I don't think I realised I was an addict, actually. I was definitely a food addict, and I think it's something that I, just got to look at me. I'm still struggling with. I'm still a work in progress. And I had no idea until I started to tackle it, how much resistance I had, how hard it was for me, and actually how I used food and other things to self-medicate, to take the edge off difficult feelings. In fact, I didn't even realise what difficult feelings were really underpinning my overeating until I tried to stop.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how you got some of that kind of self-awareness.
Well, actually, I got a diabetes diagnosis, and I didn't want to go blind. I didn't want to lose my limbs, which I know are all complications of diabetes. So it was the kind of medical reasons that I thought I've really got to try and lose weight. I think I kidded myself that I was fat and happy and I didn't care and I didn't really want to have to fit in with society's expectations, and I kind of deluded myself really, and I wasn't unhappy, but I was living in this sort of state of delusion and ignorance, I think, not realising that I was living a life where I couldn't stop, and I didn't realise how much of a struggle it was going to be to stop until I tried. But it was definitely the medical stuff that kick-started the change.
Yeah, so it was almost as if you had this mask on of this facade of being happy and being fat, and that you presented to the world, and then you kind of had this medical diagnosis that kind of made that mask kind of dissolve.
Yeah, very much. And I realised it wasn't just food I was addicted to. I heard a really interesting lecture a few weeks ago by a man that described an addictive personality as somebody with a more button, and I thought, oh my God, yes, that's me with virtually everything. More. If 10 feel good, then why not have 20? I feel even more. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And and it does feel quite good because you get that instant hit, that instant gratification, and I'm all about, it's a pleasure principle thing, isn't it? But once it starts really impacting on your life and your health and other people's lives. The other thing is that I've got 4 children, and I lost my husband a few years ago, and the reality is that if something happens to me, my children, well, all of them would have lost both parents, but my younger ones would be orphaned.
Yeah.
And it's one thing, crossing the road and getting knocked over when you didn't plan it. I don't suppose many people plan it, but it's another thing doing something, bringing a condition on yourself that you don't have to.
Yeah, so it almost felt like a bit conscious decision that could lead to, your kids not having either parents.
Yeah.
And that was like a hard reality to sort of face.
Yeah, very much so. And I realised that a lot of my behaviour could really impact my kids quite, badly.
Yeah, so that's what was kind of underlying this sense of more.
No, the more was about meeting unmet childhood needs for me, which I only really realised through a kind of hardcore personal growth journey in therapy, because as you know, when you train to be a counsellor, you have to have your own therapy, and I think part of that therapeutic process was realising just how many unmet needs I had, how much abandonment stuff I had, how much lost stuff I had. And of course, when you feel lost, you're in deficit. So when you're in emotional deficit, what do you try and do? You try and fill it up. I filled it up with biscuits and drink and anything that felt like it was doing the job. And it didn't really do the job. It did a good impression of feeling like it was doing the job, but it wasn't really, because you can't meet an emotional need with anything other than an emotional solution. No amount of biscuits are going to help that.
Yeah, I mean, what comes up for me is this guy called Greg Bear, who's written a book called Real Love. I'm not sure if you've read it.
No.
But it's really interesting. He talks about the concept of like imitation love and real love. And oftentimes we seek real love, but then we fill it up, we fill ourselves up with imitation love. And yeah, that sounds a bit like what you did and what many of us do in addiction.
I think he stole my idea. I have to have a word with him. Greg?
Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah. So tell me a bit more about that idea of like the balance between real love and imitation love.
Well, you know, I'm not an expert on that subject, but I can tell you that I don't think I have very much experience of what childhood real love feels like. I didn't know my parents. I was adopted, and adopted children, I think, always have that sense of there's attachment issues. Doesn't matter how nice the family is that you're adopted into. And I was adopted into a family who really did their best, but like most of us have our own issues, like Philip Larkin said. So I had plenty of emotional deficits. You know, the 4 A's that they talk about in transactional analysis: affirmation, affection, approval. I can't remember the other one.
No, that's
But I don't think that I had those.
yeah.
So that's what I was looking for, those fundamental, basic feelings of being validated. I did not have them. And I didn't know how to validate myself. So I just used other behaviour.
Yeah. Yeah, to get that validation.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, you know, how did you sort of, you said you went through therapy, I'm wondering how you kind of met those needs that you missed out on as a kid.
How did I meet them in a destructive way?
Or how did you start to like untangle the mess of meeting them in a destructive way to then get to a place of meeting them in perhaps a healthier way?
God, that's a really hard question, because when I look back, I realise how much of my behaviour was destructive. I self-sabotaged everything from education to relationships. I blew every opportunity that was presented to me. I think I had this fundamental, really deep belief that I didn't deserve it, which goes back actually to what we were talking about earlier off podcast about the negative self-talk we give ourselves. Self-sabotaging, lots of really inappropriate, damaging relationships, overeating, drinking. The one thing that I haven't struggled with is my friendships. I've always been able to make and maintain and have a long history with friendships, and actually my friendships have really been the thing that has sustained and helped me survive. And then of course on top of that early childhood loss, I later had 2 other losses where my first and second husband died. Not on the same day, you know, I didn't kill him or anything. They both died. So they were, you know, loss triggers other losses. So I've had a series of quite a lot of losses underpinned by unmet needs.
Yeah.
When you've got that kind of loss, well, for me anyway, I think I just sought to fill it. So your question about how did I untangle it, I think before I even could begin to untangle it, Luke, I had to realise that I was doing it.
Yeah, you had to realise they existed.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we start therapy, it's kind of like for one reason over here, then we dig deep and go down and we're like, actually, it's for this mountain over here that we didn't realise.
Yeah, you're so right. And the other thing was I was a real blamer. I was a real victim. I spent so much of my life it's my parents' fault, it's my adoptive parents' fault, it's my teacher's fault, it's the government's fault, it's this, it's that. It was always everybody else's fault. Could never ever take any real responsibility. It took a long time for me to sort of grow up emotionally and realise that in a lot of the chaos, the common denominator was me.
Yeah.
And I had been dealt a raw hand, But what was I going to do? Always go through life moaning about the raw hand I've been dealt?
Yeah.
That's not going to change anything. The
Yeah.
only person that could change things was me.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And actually realising that you've got that responsibility over your life simultaneously is a bit terrifying, because you think, oh, fucking hell, no one's going to come and rescue me, I've got to do it myself. But it's also liberating, because you realise you've got so much more power than you ever thought you had.
Yeah.
So that's I suppose where my personal growth journey started, realising that I had to take control and realising that I could take control.
Yeah, because I think that's true, that gap between being a victim and taking responsibility to that higher level of consciousness. I'm wondering if that was like an exact moment, or did you hit like a rock bottom or anything like that?
There was something last year that triggered it, a relationship actually, that caused me to realise that I had really significant attachment issues, really significant ones. Because when I wasn't using food to meet my needs, I realised I had a bit of a shifted addiction, and actually I started using something else, getting my needs met emotionally. So when food wasn't there to mask my symptoms, all this need and pain and longing and pining and yearning for love and approval and affirmation really welled up, and it was sort of sitting there waiting for a target, I think.
Yeah.
And in the absence of food, I still used other things. So that's when I realised that it was a problem that I had to address.
Yeah, and I think that's like very common in addiction, and I know for me personally, that sense of like when you stop using one drug or one thing to get your needs met, you then look for something else, and it's like that kind of gremlin comes out and you like searches for something else in this vicinity to like take hold of, in a sense.
So for you, Luke, when you were using and you stopped using one substance, was it a deliberate seeking out of something else, or did something else just present itself to you and then you thought, oh shit, I'm using that now?
I think it was like a gradual process. So I'd say I realised I got like a lot of my drugs met through one drug, and then when I started to work on myself and stop doing that drug, I then started to learn to meet some of my own needs.
Yeah.
But then I also subconsciously, the overflow, so say I was able to meet 20% of my needs, the other 80% were getting met through like other things like food, for example,
right,
or smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
And then as I slowly started to work on myself more in therapy, that slowly got less and less and less, in a sense. Yeah, so I feel like it was like definitely a process.
Has it taken you a long time?
Yeah, I'd say I'm always a work in progress.
Yeah, me too.
Like over 70 counselling sessions. I'm still going.
Yeah.
I think it's always a work in progress. And it's almost like when you go to the gym, the minute you learn to lift one bar, you put more weights on. That's kind of like the gym of life. As you get to one level, you get to go to the next level and the next level and the next level. And when we think about our human needs, the ability to have like growth and contribution at the top, growing is important. It's, if you look at nature, everything grows and contributes, or it's taken out of the food chain. It's quite black and white in a sense. So our kind of mission in life or purpose for being here is to grow and contribute, is to always put more weight on the bar and to always push. And I think managing that balance between like gratitude of how far you've come and then growing to the next level, that's always like a battle as well.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned nature. It's something that it's an example that I use with clients actually, because as much as we have to push ourselves and recognise when we need to move out of our comfort zones, there's this idea about being kind to ourselves matters as well. Because if you had a rosebud, beautiful little rosebud, you wouldn't start yelling at it, why the hell aren't you a rose yet? Hurry up. It's not going to do anything. So we have to recognise the growth process in ourselves as well, because I think the second we start giving ourselves a hard time, an unrealistic hard time, we have to realise that things happen in their own time. this rosebud will unfold in its own time.
Yeah.
But we do have to tend it, and we have to tend ourselves and each other.
Yeah, and I think that's a lovely analogy, that idea that...
I only use lovely analogies. Yeah, it's compulsory part of my conversation.
Lovely analogies are compulsory.
Sometimes I go and say something and I think that's not lovely enough. I'm just not going to say it.
But no, yeah, I think analogies are amazing, and I think one that I always used to say to myself is, Luke, you haven't been buried, you've been planted.
Ooh.
I also have lovely analogies too.
We'll do our next session at the allotment, I think.
Yeah, lovelyanalogies.com.
Yeah.
But so I always just remind myself when things are really hard, when I feel like there's a lot of growth and a lot of emotional weight on my shoulders, that I've been planted and I'll blossom. And but I love intertwining your analogy of the sense of like, stop making yourself rush, stop shouting at the rosebud going, you should be better. And when clients say to us in therapy, I'm making progress, how fast can I see results and stuff, I'm going to use that analogy. I'm going to say, when you think about a rosebud, you don't sit there and go...
Not without my permission. Written permission.
It's a copyright.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Every word I've said is... In fact, you can't use one word that I've ever said.
After the episode, I'll get your written permission so you can publish it.
I think so.
Yeah, that's brilliant. But I think that's important to remember, to almost in a sense give up the need for control, the need for something to happen.
Oh, yeah. Now that idea about surrendering, bloody hell, that's been a big one for me, to surrender.
So tell me a bit more about that.
Well, I read a while ago one of these memes, that said, accept every situation as though you'd chosen it for yourself. And I thought initially, what a bloody stupid thing to say. If I'm under a car with my legs crushed, I'm not going to think, I'm glad I chose this situation. But I think what it means is that actually, if you don't resist, if you don't try and paddle upstream when the water's going downstream, you actually have more potential to recognise the opportunity for growth. And so acceptance, the art of letting go, has been a big deal for me. And something that I wrote about a while ago was that it's easier to have something taken from an open palm than it is prized out of a clenched fist. And I really do, in fact that's why I've got that photograph on my website of the open palm and the bird, because there's something about letting go, letting be, surrender, acceptance, that is not passive at all. It's actually powerful and liberating, and it frees you from the idea of having expectations of outcomes. There's that lovely story about the Zen master, when a pupil goes to him and asks for a lesson in Zen, and the Zen master makes him a cup of tea, and he just keeps pouring and pouring and pouring the tea into the cup, and the cup's overflowing, and the pupil says, "Well, why are you I don't know if they go, whoa, I don't know if they do say whoa in Zen, but he said, "What are you doing? The cup's overflowing, why are you still pouring?" And the Zen master said, "Well, this cup is like you, it's full, so we have to keep ourselves kind of empty of expectations in order to be filled with the right stuff." God, that was a long waffle, wasn't it?
No, that's lovely, and I think that idea of the cup is amazing in that sense of, like you say, remove the expectations, the guilt, the shame, the low level emotions, and then once we start to fill that up with the love, real love, not imitation love from drugs and stuff like that, we can then learn to give from our overflow of all the love and affection and care we're giving to ourselves.
Oh, overflow, yeah. I mean, I like that, because it's not only, that's my impression of a cup, by the way, it's not only that we're full of expectations, but we're full of self-beliefs as well. We're full of what we think we are. We label ourselves, we categorise ourselves, we've got self-limiting beliefs. Oh, I won't do that, oh, I'll never earn that, or she's the pretty one, or I'm the fat one, or I'm the so-and-so one, he's the what's-it one. We've got these expectations, and they really, really limit how we move forward. In fact, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about the things that we say to ourselves. we wouldn't, well, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't dream of going up to one of my friends and saying, you know what, you're a bit useless, you're a bit fat, in fact you're a bit shit, you'll never amount to anything. Oh, I don't even know why you're bothering trying to learn the guitar, you'll never do it, sounds bloody awful. But we say that to ourselves, and the longest relationship we ever have is with ourselves. And we tell ourselves we're crap and rubbish all day long. So changing our self-talk is a fundamental way of changing how we can respond to the world, because it's my belief that that the way we see ourselves underpins the way we respond to the world. And if we think we're all a bit crap, then that's gonna really direct our choices.
Yeah, and I wonder how your kind of relationship to your identity, from being like in addiction to being like even becoming a counsellor, all those kind of labels we have, how has your identity changed, and what's your relationship been like with your identity?
Oh, Luke, that's a really good and difficult question. I think I see myself probably as more fragile than I thought I was, but with more capacity to manage it. I don't think I realised how damaged I was until I started realising how damaged I was.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a weird thing to say, but I thought, most of us think we're all right, don't we?
Yeah.
Until we start unpeeling and unpicking our stuff, and we think, well, bloody hell. I don't know about you, but often I think I've dealt with something, and then, you can't ever be complacent, because some other old crap rears its head and you've got to deal with that as well.
Yeah, it's almost like things come up, and again, coming back to the gym analogy, things come up, you process that kind of thing, and then you get more weight on the bar, you get another lesson, life gives it to you more, and you're like, yeah, right, I've dealt with this, we'll never say the word complete, but I'm complete, I've fixed that, and then, 6 months, a year later, you're like, oh shit, it's happening again, and oftentimes things do come out of like left field, and we do sort of like, not sort of suspect stuff. That's why it's good to go in therapy and get the self-awareness and look under every single rock and try and gain that sense of who am I, what's going on, what is this experience, what is my experience, and to analyse that experience.
So do you think that how would you refer to yourself? Addict in recovery, ex-addict? What would you give, or would you even give yourself a label?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked through like a powerful exercise a long time ago around my identity in like a business seminar, or it's more of a psychological seminar, to be honest. And it was about like rebuilding your identity. So we wrote down all the labels that you had.
Okay.
Some of mine would have been like addict, worthless, not good enough. You realise they're kind of stuck on with Velcro. And then you kind of get to choose a new identity. And I kind of like built one which I like. And it's kind of like an I am statement. And now, I'll say it now, it's I am an extreme entrepreneur who stays calm in the storms of life whilst trusting in the flow of the river and helping and committing. Wait, let me go again. I'm an extreme entrepreneur who stays calm in the storms of life whilst, I can't remember it, but whilst committing to help others, while committing to being authentic and vulnerable to help others by example. So, let me go again. I'm an extreme entrepreneur who stays calm in the storms of life while trusting the flow of the river, whilst committing to being authentic and vulnerable to help lead others by example. So it's like an identity you choose. So I'm an extreme entrepreneur, I stay calm in the storms of life and trust in the flow of the river.
I love that.
I'm committed to being authentic and vulnerable to help lead others by example. And when I think about myself, am I a counsellor, am I like whatever label, we pick up loads, father, son, all of those different things, family member, boyfriend. I always come back to my I am statement, and I think that's who I am.
I love that. I love that because it weaves its way through all the other labels.
Yeah.
It's deeper and more meaningful.
Yeah, and I think it keeps me focused. And even where I went from being like an addict or a businessman or an entrepreneur, all those labels, and I became a counsellor, and I became picked up other labels that I may have put on myself with Velcro, like emotional, like more feminine, embracing more feminine energy, being more connected with that kind of emotions and stuff, and removing some of like the toxic masculinity and all that sort of stuff. Having that I am statement allowed me to be able to try on different labels and take on new labels without being so attached to them, without weaving them into my way of being, and have that sense of like perspective and almost a sense of like understanding how I'm on with Velcro and this is who I am.
So you've got some stuff about your past and your story on your website, haven't you, in the About Me stuff? Would you ever disclose in a session about your past? Would that ever be relevant?
Well, I think it comes back to like the ethical code and beneficence, you know.
Yeah.
Will it benefit the client to tell the client? Am I telling them from a place of ego, oh, I'm better than you, blah, blah, blah. So I think it depends on what's happening in that moment. I guess I'd go with like my gut or my emotions and my intuition and think, you know, what's going on here? Will it benefit the client? I think questions are obviously tricky ones as well.
Yeah.
When someone says to you, oh, so have you been through addiction? What's your story?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
So yeah, I would disclose like, kind of as much as I feel comfortable at the time. I feel comfortable exposing everything, but in terms of like the impact on the client, disclosing through the lens of the client's beneficence in a sense, rather than just saying everything because that's what I want to say.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of gauge it, by what would kind of help the client, and also think about what answer does the client really want. Do they want the answer of my story? By asking that question, you know, what is the answer they seek? And I think that's something I would consider.
Would you ask them that?
Yeah, like if I was that forward thinking in the moment and I was that on the ball, then yeah, I'd hope so. And I'd be like, so I'm wondering, that's very Rogerian as well.
Yeah, why do you want to know?
Yeah, what answer you're looking for in a sense. Yeah, what would you like me to say? But I think if I had to guess, I would say that they're looking for certainty that they can overcome their problems.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if anyone can give them that certainty but themselves. But I think mentors and role models are really beneficial, and having something to aim for and someone who's walked that path and made the journey can be very, very, very beneficial as well.
Well, that's why I think people like Russell Brand are so good. In fact, he's just written a book about mentors. I don't know whether you read his book on recovery.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. Yeah.
Really, really, really good and accessible. And so I know that when I lost my husband, one of the things that helped me the most was an online bereavement support place.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know any of these people, but everybody had been through the same journey, and there were people there, you know, a couple of years ahead of me, saying, hold on, it will get better, you're not always going to feel like this, because I didn't believe I was ever going to feel okay again, ever. Yeah. I can't tell you the depth of the despair that I felt. Of course, in time, I became the person that was 2 years down the line, encouraging people and reassuring them that they weren't going to be in that place forever. So the whole idea of mentorship and encouragement, and somebody who's walked that path giving you that kind of reassurance, because we can't give certainty, can we? Because the clients have to be active. We all have to be active participants in our own recovery. No one's going to be our champion. No one's going to come and rescue us.
Yeah.
But we can certainly be encouragers and facilitators.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one thing I try and remind myself is that, you know, you don't have to like have written the whole book or complete the whole book. You just have to be like one chapter ahead.
Yeah.
And you never have to be like perfect. I don't think I'm ever going to be like the perfect recovered addict ever. But just, the fact that I'm not, you know, perfect doesn't mean I can't help people along their journey. And that kind of helps me stay humble, remember, you know, I do have value to provide. I can help clients and show them like some kind of path and help them in a sense.
It's interesting, this idea of disclosure, actually, because you do see a lot of counsellors online doing blogs, sharing their story, being authentic and real and vulnerable, but then you've got the other idea of counselling as being very boundaried and not sharing anything. So I just wonder where you sit on that kind of perspective.
Yeah, on that boundary. So I guess I sit more towards the disclosure part, especially when it comes to addiction and stuff like that. I don't like put out my address or what I had for dinner or stuff like that, or necessarily my own therapy sessions. But yeah, I do disclose my story and what I've been through and stuff like that. And again, I think it helps clients have that empathy. If you don't really know someone or know anything about them, I think it's hard to make that kind of connection. In a sense.
I agree. I have quite a few clients come and see me who've been bereaved because they know my story. I have clients seen with eating issues because they know my story. And I think actually that can be quite helpful if you think somebody has walked that path.
Yeah.
And I love that idea that you haven't got to have written the whole book, you just got to have some of the tools to help others, because we're never going to write the whole book, are we?
Yeah, and it comes back to those expectations that we perhaps have when we're kids, that we're meant to be perfect. Again, with transactional analysis, the drivers, the be perfect driver, to be strong. I've got to be perfect and know everything before I can help anyone. I've got to take the degree, then the masters, then the 2 masters, then I've got to have 4 masters, then I've got to do the trauma course and this course and that course. And you end up chasing a mirage that doesn't even exist, and you haven't even helped anyone.
And that's a kind of avoidance anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's saying, oh, I can't do that until that's happened. Oh no, well that's happened, but now I've got to wait for so and so. And actually, if we really strip away what's going on, it's a form of self-sabotage, a form of avoidance, a form of not having to do something.
Yeah.
I wonder what that's underpinned by. Fear, failure, fear. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned about TA. Well, it's not funny, but you know. But I've forgotten what they're called. But there are different behaviours. One of them is catch me if you can, cops and robbers. That was definitely mine. You know, sort of wheeling, dealing, getting away with things. Yeah. Doing 40 and a 30.
Yeah, what always pushing the boundaries of life, acting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. And of course my stuff's coupled with because I have got a mental health condition. I have got bipolar, so for me learning to trust my own judgment has been quite difficult, because sometimes I think, oh, is this brilliant idea really a brilliant idea, or is it coming through the filter, my bipolar filter? So I have to work on that as well. And of course you have some impulse control and some reckless behaviour and some, some stuff that goes hand in hand with having this. So that's just an additional difficulty sometimes. But often it's not that bad, most of the time it's not that bad. It's just something I've got to be really mindful of.
Yeah, and how have you managed those two? And I think a lot of people ask the question, which one do you solve or work on first? Is it the addiction or is it like the bipolar? How has that been?
Well, actually, when I finally got my diagnosis, it was a relief, because I'd had all this really extreme manic behaviour, and I just thought I couldn't manage myself properly. I thought everybody else, you just assume, don't you, that everybody's got these feelings, but other people don't go crazy with it, and so somehow they're better people fundamentally. So when I finally got that diagnosis, I was, for the first time ever, able to realise that there wasn't actually something wrong with me. It wasn't flawed as a person. I actually had something which made my behaviour difficult to control. And of course, once you realise that, then you can start to take control and implement strategies and start to use tools. Same with my son. My youngest son's got dyslexia, and for most of his school life he's believed he's stupid. When he got his dyslexia diagnosis, it was easier for him because he realised he had a condition and we could work with it. So in terms of what comes first, I don't know the answer. That's a very long response to a non-answer, isn't it? Certainly knowing I've got bipolar has made it easier, but it doesn't change. It's not a get out of jail card, and I still have to address behaviour, but sometimes it's difficult.
Yeah, and what are some of the tools and tactics you've put in place to help with that behaviour?
Okay, so one of them is learning to respond rather than react. I've always been quite explosive, you know, so not in a negative way, impulsive rather than explosive actually. So situation will happen. I think, yes, a brilliant idea. Brilliant. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've signed up to things, so I think it's a brilliant idea, and then thank God for the cooling off period.
I do the same thing, by the way.
Do you?
I'm very impulsive. Any salesmen out there, don't contact me.
Yeah, I don't need another car.
Yeah.
Don't need another holiday. I don't need another credit card.
Yeah.
It all just feels like such a brilliant idea at the time.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I give no thought to how I'm going to pay it off.
Yeah, no, it's just, it is that impulse.
It is.
Yeah, that's brilliant. The excitement. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you respond instead of
I
react.
try to respond rather than just react, because I think when you respond, you get a choice about how you behave in response to something. It's just that little bit less impulsive. It just buys you a little bit of time, and that can give you just enough control to perhaps not get yourself in trouble. So that's something that I do. The other thing is that I've got 2 or 3 friends that are all on mental alert. And if they see me going mental, they have to look after me, and they're brilliant at it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I love my friends.
Yeah.
I really love my friends, and they really look after me, and I hope I look after them as well. Not in a rescuing sense, in a healthy friendship way.
Yeah.
And they do really take care of me.
But that sounds like a really good thing to have in place.
Yeah.
And what kind of relationship do you have with your friends?
Really good, really healthy. It's the area in my life that's probably the healthiest. My friendships.
Do you have any tips or tricks for anyone out there that to build healthy friendships, or what a healthy friendship is?
Actually, a lot of people struggle with this.
Yeah.
I think you have to make some effort. I think if you don't get an instant reply to a text, you can't always assume it's because someone doesn't like you anymore. I think that you can't just wait to be invited to things. You know, sometimes it's good to initiate things, to invite people out. And to be interested in people. I suppose doing this job, I really am interested in people. I love asking people about themselves, and I've always liked asking people about themselves. So I think, being interested in people. And a really good tip to learn to be interested in people is to read biographies and autobiographies, because then you get a sense of going under the surface of a person's life.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what kind of autobiographies have you written or read?
Well, I have written one, and I strongly suggest you all start with mine.
Go and buy it on Amazon. Shameless plug.
Yeah, it's not called Shameless Plug.
No,
it probably should be.
It
It's called Song of the Sea. Yes, I'm saying it in that voice because I don't like the title.
Okay.
I thought it was going to be this sort of meaningful, emotional, literary tome, but actually it's like an extended take a break article. So,
Okay.
you know, lightweight reading.
And what other biographies do you sort of recommend for people to know so they can get under the hood of humans? And
Well, I guess if they're interested in people, I mean, I think whether it's a celebrity, a scientist, a doctor, I don't think it necessarily has to be somebody really well known, but just if you can't think of anybody to read an autobiography for, just buy a book by somebody you're interested in. Obviously it's going to be edited, the chances are it's going to be ghostwritten, but you'll still get a sense of character beyond the superficial. And I think it helps give you insight into a person. And then you can start thinking about, other people must have this depth as well. Because we all know that once you scratch the surface of anybody's lives, there's a story to tell.
Yeah, and a lot of people do walk around in life and present each other with these masks that we wear, and it is almost about learning to take these masks off. So
sure.
How do you manage that with your friends, with meeting your friends? How did you meet them? What's that journey been like?
I suppose my friendships have been things where I haven't been, with the exception of one person who I had a big falling out with well, it wasn't actually a falling out, but the friendship ended, and it was really devastating to me. But that's the only person I've ever had that with. All my others, I've never been rejected, and I don't reject people either. I'm very lucky with my friendship group, I think, that we're very accepting and supportive of each other. And we don't really gossip about each other, so there's a lot of trust there. So taking the mask off, I'm not scared to be vulnerable with my friends because they've never given me any reason to fear being vulnerable because they've only ever loved me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. With them, you know, I'm the version of myself I want to be. But in other areas where I've got insecurities, I've got masks.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to...
Oh, you should do counselling.
Yeah, luckily I am, yeah.
Yeah.
Call my number to have counselling. No, I'm joking. Yeah, so it makes me wonder because I think oftentimes as kids we crave that unconditional love, and when we're brought into the world as a baby, it's like if you hold my hand when you cross the road you get love, and if you don't hold my hand when you cross the road you don't get love. And love kind of becomes conditional. And oftentimes I think from our friends we do kind of get that unconditional love, and because there's not all the intimacy involved, that makes a big difference. I think intimacy is another, 5 years in therapy, but another
only
big
5
subject.
Intimate relationships, I mean
they're hard.
Yeah, because they in an intimate relationship it's where you expose your emotional, your physical vulnerabilities, you reveal yourself at huge personal risk. I'll say it again. We reveal ourselves at huge personal risk, or potentially huge personal risk.
Yeah.
Because if you show who you really are, and then that gets rejected, that's pretty terrible, isn't it? Actually, I don't think people realise that breakups are as devastating as they really are.
Yeah.
I think a relationship breakup is one of the worst things that can happen to a person, personally.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
Because it's a rejection of your authentic self.
Yeah, and I think
that's terrifying.
Yeah. And how have you dealt with some of that terrifyingness in the past?
Very well. I guess it's a decision. It's a decision to enter into it fully, and the balance between accepting, back to our empty bowl. I think I'm a work in progress with this.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got an answer for you.
Yeah.
Because while something feels frightening, it doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think oftentimes with relationships, when we start out on a journey, whether in addiction or not, the addiction, we sort of solve that on the journey to becoming our true self. Yeah. And then kind of relationships, if you're not in one, then relationships kind of with yourself and with other people are like a big challenge. It's always like you have 2 broken children trying to live as adults. It's always that battle of unmet needs and met needs and transactions and all that kind of stuff always going on every day. So I think relationships are always a work in progress.
Yeah.
And just to remember, the relationship with yourself is the most important. If you go and fix that, all your relationships will improve.
Are you talking about romantic relationships or all human sort of interactions?
So yeah, well, both in a sense, but that statement was around like intimate relationships. As in, for me, intimate relationships are always challenging. It's always like an area of growth and growing and becoming better.
Me too.
But I would also say, in my other relationships with family is a massive one, because your family, what is the saying? Love your family, choose your friends. There's always that sense of like, your relationship to your family, and I think whether they're alive or not, they're with you or not, that relationship is still important.
And what can be difficult sometimes with family, incidentally I call my friends family, what can be difficult is that you're ready to be a different version of yourself, either through personal growth or therapy or whatever, but the script that your family has you in makes it quite difficult for them to accept that you've changed.
Yeah.
And that can be a challenge as well. That's why I think, you know, people can really grow and change and be very different as a result of the therapeutic process. But they could be completely normal in their professional lives, and you know, but they go back to their family and they revert to being sort of foot stomping teenagers again.
Yeah. And I think oftentimes, you know, they say the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, being around your family a lot can have a big influence on you.
Yeah.
And that relationship and sense of self, and again, coming back to identity, the identity they place on you is like almost very powerful and competes in many ways to the identity you place on yourself.
Yeah, very much. And actually, it's connected, I think, with that internal dialogue that we have, because our we internalise external voices, don't we?
Yeah.
Can I check the time?
No, sir.
Oh, is it? How will you know if it's still running?
I'm not sure.
Oh, did you
We'll
want to
just
check?
continue.
Oh, what if it's not filming anymore?
Well, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
It's still recording the audio.
Oh.
So even if the cameras aren't working.
Okay. It's really interesting, this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it. Yeah, because I'm having sort of light bulb moments as we're talking. Thinking, oh, I didn't know that about my friends. Oh, I didn't know that about that. Oh, I didn't. There's something about speaking, isn't there, that processes information.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why therapy is so, I think, fantastic, is because you hear your own voice, and even active listening, the sense of us two sitting here and I'm listening to you, all my attention, I'm not on my smartphone, on WhatsApp, watching the football game or TV or anything. It's just me and you, and I'm listening to you and you're talking, you're hearing yourself talking. So there's 2 of us hearing you talk, for example, or me talk as I'm talking now. And yeah, I think that is powerful. And the dots we connect when we start to hear our own words and process stuff is fascinating.
Yeah, because certainly when I'm with clients, and as a client myself, a number of times people say, oh, I never thought of that before. But they've actually put the jigsaw pieces together themselves.
Yeah.
All we've done as therapists is create an environment that's safe enough for them to offload and look at and explore their thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, I had a bit of a revelation I'm not going to share it, but in my own therapy this week, I've got a brilliant therapist. She's fantastic. And I had a bit of a revelation, and it was so obvious that I thought, I've spent years in therapy, I've trained as a therapist, I do therapeutic work for hours and hours and hours every single day. Why didn't I see that before?
Yeah.
It was so obvious.
Yeah, and oftentimes it does cause us to have these light bulb moments or breakthroughs, and you're like, wait a minute, how did I not see this? But it's almost like it is outside of our left field, and we just don't get it.
Out of awareness.
Yeah.
Edge of awareness.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like our job as counsellors, is to bring things on the edge of clients' awareness into their awareness and kind of connect some of those dots.
So Luke, what would make you stop being a therapist?
If I got hit by a car.
Okay.
No. What would make me
you
stop
chose that
being a
situation.
therapist? No, I don't know if there would be one. I guess if there was something big happened in my life, like a tragedy or something like that, and I felt like it would be unethical, or I needed to go and take time for myself. Like I know therapists, for example, who like a parent died and then they take 3 weeks off and they go, like I would do that. So if like a big tragedy happened, I'd take a month off, I'd go on a retreat, I'd do self-care, I'd do all the stuff I preach, and I'd go and have my own therapy, I'd take a holiday, I'd go and find some coaches and all that fun stuff I do normally, but I'd do that immersively.
Yeah.
And I would stop seeing clients in the easiest transition that would look like. And I'll go and go into like a whole of growth and like an almost self-built rehab, and I'll go and do all of that growth, and I'll come back, like whether that's 6 months, a year, 1 month, whatever. The timeline I initially came up with will probably be wrong because there'll be loads more stuff to deal with. But yeah, then when I felt like I could then refilled up my cup, coming back to the cup analogy, and I could then give from my overflow, then I'll start working with clients again. And I feel like this is something I'll do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the only thing that would stop me doing it temporarily, would be if my cup somehow got knocked over and smashed. I'd have to find a way to rebuild the pieces, refill up the cup. Then when I could confidently give from my overflow, then I'd re-engage. Yeah.
That's a long answer.
Yeah, it is.
But very interesting.
How about you?
I feel that I'm in this for the long haul, like you do probably. But I don't know what shape it's going to take. I'm really interested in doing workshops. I'm interested, I've always liked, I worked in PR for most of my life, PR, networking, it's always been about relationships. And I actually don't see in many ways, it sounds daft perhaps, but I see therapy almost like PR, because you're not selling somebody, or you're not selling somebody a product or a band or a service, but you are selling them the idea and the belief that they can be different.
Yeah.
Not selling them, but do you know what I mean? It's the same kind of skill set. It's that encouragement, it's that persuasiveness, there is so much more to you than you realise, and helping them to get a new perspective and reframe their idea of themselves.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's the same, very similar skill base and tools. But I'd like to do it in a wider way sometimes. I'd like to do workshops. But still therapeutically.
Yeah.
So I suppose mine's a long answer and it's not as interesting as yours. So what would make me stop? Getting really excited about something else, I suppose, would make me stop.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that it would be anything that isn't counselling related.
Yeah, well, that's like distant or too much of a leap from where you are now. It's still like the transferable skills from like working in PR to working as a counsellor.
Yes.
There would then be like another level.
Yeah.
Like a reincarnation in a sense.
Yeah.
Of
an evolution.
An evolution, yeah, perfect. Well, on the note of evolution, we are sort of coming towards the end.
We are.
Do you have any kind of final thoughts or anything?
No, but I think I'd like to do this again.
Excellent. Yeah, you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Luke.
No worries. Thanks very much for coming on the show. As always, thanks for listening. And if during this episode anything came up for you or anything was triggered inside you, please do not hesitate to reach out to one of our expert trained counsellors at insideaddiction.co.uk, and we'll be able to provide you with a free consultation and a safe and confidential space to explore any of that stuff that's going on inside you, or that really came up for you as you were listening to the episode, because sometimes some of the content can be triggering and it can sort of bring stuff up in us that we need to explore. So feel free to reach out. And on that note, I wish you well on your journey to serenity.